Hello and welcome to The Lion's Den. I'm your host Matt, as always. And again, it's been a bit of a slow week, but we have a few things to start off with, so let's just jump right into it. Also, if the audio sounds a bit different, I'm trying out a different recording setup that hopefully streamlines my creation process. So we'll see how it goes, whether the audio is absolute garbage, I'll go back to the old way. But if not, we'll keep it. So, shower thoughts. Avatar. Not the blue people, the good one with the elemental bending and all of that. If you haven't seen any of it, highly recommend going and finding it and watching it because it's just so good. I think it's on Netflix. I watched it on Amazon Prime Video. And Amazon Prime Video has both Avatar The Last Airbender as well as Legend of Korra. Both very good shows, highly recommend them. I think the first question people will probably be interested in knowing is what kind of bender do you want to be? Now, personally, weighing up all of the options, I definitely go for something. I want to be an airbender. Simple, plain, simple answer: airbender. It's the most practical, in my opinion. Have you ever had that instance where you're like holding your phone and you're out walking and somebody bumps you and you drop it, or you're holding, I don't know, a piece of food, same instance, you drop it, airman it, boom, catch it, no problems. Or it's a method of transport that works anywhere. Like with water, sure, if you've got a body of water you can travel over it, and if you're an earthbender you need land to travel over. Airbending works everywhere. Firebenders don't even have a mode of transport, so let's just not talk about them. Not to mention the fact that you'd be able to sort of give yourself more power, so that you can jump easily and you'd have such increased movement. And obviously the way they're taught, they're very skilled at evasion and moving and dodging and not actually fighting whilst fighting. It's quite cool, quite enjoy it. Obviously there is the whole thing that they're vegetarians, but I think I could get on board with that eventually. I think the biggest thing for me though with Avatar is, why did none of the avatars ever mix their bending outside of the avatar state? Like, in my head it makes so much sense that if you can control both air and fire, why not mix them? Because with the airbending you could create like a jet stream in any shape you wanted, and then the firebending could ignite said jet stream, and then you've got fire that you control. It's even more powerful, I think, than the standard firebending where when they throw punches and stuff it goes straight, or if they're kicking and using fire on their feet then it only flows the foot. You'd have so much more control over where you put the fire. And then with things like earth and water bending, you could use the earth bending to like get a massive chunk of rock, and then use the water bending to say carve it down into a really sharp spike or something to throw at your enemies. Like, why was that never shown or demonstrated? Don't know, maybe it's limitations of being the Avatar. Not entirely sure. But moving on, what about Korra? A lot of people kind of give Legend of Korra flack for not quite living up to Avatar, but I think it was pretty good in my opinion. The beginning of each season, strangely enough, every single season in my opinion, is really rough. It doesn't start out great, but the story does build quite gradually and quite nicely to a point where there's this sense of good tension and you're waiting for the big finale, and then it all blows up and goes amazing and it's really cool. And that's the strong suit of Korra personally, that you have to tough it out in the beginning, but it just gets so much better as you go on, and the endings are just so good for each season. So, right, next thing, Animal Crossing. Oh my god, Animal Crossing. It has been a year since Animal Crossing came out. Almost. It came out, I think, on the 20th of March, 2020, so it's practically been a year. And, oh boy, a lot has happened in that year. I remember that when I went to pick up the game, I had ordered it to an Amazon locker, pre-ordered it. First game I've ever pre-ordered. Whew. And I pre-ordered it to an Amazon locker that was in walking distance of my house. I walked to get it, and then it was maybe 3-4 days that I then had to go home because, you know, the fun stuff happened. But with the anniversary coming up, they're releasing a few things to go along with it. So there's some items and some other few little mechanic things that are being implemented, which is interesting. I think it's nice that we're getting something to kind of commemorate it. It's not masses that they're using to commemorate it, but at least it's something rather than nothing. I'm kind of hoping that now that it's the 1 year anniversary, they're hoping to bring out something quite big, like maybe the Roost. Can I have my coffee, please, Nintendo? You can only one can hope. Another thing is that when you're first starting the game, eventually you get the point where it says, oh, you can build bridges and inclines and stuff like that. And generally the first bridge you build is a log bridge because it's cheap. I finally replaced that after nearly a year. Decided to switch it out for a nice little stone bridge. So that's progress, I suppose. Also, I have a birder villager, as I call it. That sounds really bad. I have this villager called Bubbles. She's a hippo. She's sweet. She's not the most objectionable characters that I've seen, but I don't want her. I want Apollo. So when she finally says, yo, I want to move out, I'm gonna just buy a bunch of Nook Miles tickets and go island hopping to hopefully find my boy Apollo, because I want him. So recently I've also been quite hyper-focused at researching PC building. Now I'm not actually looking at building a PC quite currently. That's sort of a maybe summer's thing I'm looking to do, but I am keeping an eye on it and seeing what the landscape looks like now, so that hopefully in the future I have a reference point. But oh my, it's so dumb. I've been practicing sort of putting parts together, checking compatibility, checking if I've got enough wattage, if the parts actually fit in the case that I'm looking at. And I've figured out that for about 500 quid, you can get a really good PC. Minus the graphics card, because graphics cards are stupid these days. I mean, things like a GT 710, this is a terrible graphics card, is going for like 150 quid. That's insane. That is not worth 150 quid at all. But that's the kind of market we're in currently. Things like a 1650 Super are selling for 500 quid, never mind the good stuff like the 3070s that are up in the £1,000 range. It's stupid. And I assume it's just because of the shortage of silicon, as well as scalpers that are buying them and crypto miners that are buying them, that just makes everything cost so much more, which is really annoying. But I suppose it does mean that if you're looking right now, I'd maybe suggest trying to how do you explain this? So like, let's say you want a Ryzen 5 system, for example. Find all of the parts you want, but then swap out the processor for like an APU instead. So to kind of tide you over for now, and then in the future, when GPU prices aren't stupid, you can look to buy a GPU to whack in the system, and then maybe upgrade your CPU down the line. Because I wouldn't want to think about buying a computer right now. The other thing I've looked at is pre-builds, because that does seem like the only way you're going to get a decent system now for a decent price. Not a good price, a decent price. I've seen a lot of systems that are in their 600, 700 range that have like 1660 Supers or 1650s in them, which is, I feel, more expensive than it should be, but a good price considering that if you try to build an equivalent system on your own, you're probably paying more like 1,500, which is insane. So, you win some, you lose some. A really random thing that came to mind this morning is, do you people find any difference between brands of fast food? And in this context, I'm talking about coffee. So in England, we have a few coffee chains. So we have Starbucks, like America, we have one called Costa, and we have Cafe Nero, and probably a couple other places. But to me, they're all the same. And I don't know if that's just because I have a very unrefined palate, or if they are actually quite similar because of UK regulations, but I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think there's any difference between them? Is one better than the other? Do you just prefer one over the other? I don't know. Anyway, that probably wraps us up now. I hope you have enjoyed listening to my rambling, if you indeed still are. Again, I really need to figure out a better intro and outro. No, my intro's alright. It's the outro. Anyway, I hope to see you all next week. Bye!